episode 101, Coffee with John and Dr. Leanne Young.
Today is gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day.
Well, I hope you're having a lucky day, a blessed day. Welcome, friends. We are so happy to have you join us for a cup of coffee as we listen to inspiring conversations with family and professional caregivers, all about caregiver success. Today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Leanne Young. She's the executive director with the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas. You know, Dr. Young is going to be sharing how she went from the battlefield to brain health. Fascinating story. But before we get started, I want to share a good word for caregivers.
God cares for caregivers. Remember, He's one too. Say, are you feeling in the shadows right now? Just where's the sunshine of life? Where's the brightness of it all? You just feel like you're in the shadows. Well, He can lift you up above those shadows. Those may be fearful shadows, but I'll tell you, you can get high above it. And I like what Isaiah in the 40th chapter says, that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength and they will soar on wings like eagles. Hey, would you like to soar like an eagle today? Well, God wants to help you do that. And you may not feel like you can even get off the ground because caregivers sometimes are just tired and weary and worn out. And I don't even know if I have the strength to fly. Well, He can help you fly. I guarantee you that the Lord is with you now. Recognize that. Know that He can give you that extra so you can take wings like an eagle and fly above, be lifted above the shadows of life. That's such good news, isn't it? I'm so glad to share it with you. Don't forget, God cares for caregivers. And remember, He's one too.
Welcome back. Today, it's my privilege and honor to have Dr. Leanne Young. She has 20 years of experience in engineering. She actually started her career with the Department of Defense, and she was studying the effects of explosive and bomb blast and how to help our soldiers to be able to survive from these types of wounds and injuries, and how to better prepare and develop equipment that would allow them to sustain these types of explosions. Well, after leaving the Defense Department, she worked with DARPA, and she led the first clinical trials of blast-induced brain injuries. And she led the development of a computer model for planning the medical response to blast attack on a ship. Well, with all of her experience with understanding explosions and how they affect the brain, she then left the Department of Defense and moved to become the executive director at the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas. And she now studies and helps define how people have a healthy brain. What is a healthy brain? What can you do to make a healthy brain? Well, Dr. Young, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. You know, looking at your biography, you have a very interesting journey. So you actually started kind of the Department of Defense and engineering, and now you're over here in brain health. Can you just sort of give us a little bit of background and how you got to the Brain Performance Institute?
It doesn't sound like an obvious transition to go from engineering to brain science, but there's a good explanation for it actually. As an engineer, I was doing research in support of the Department of Defense, as you say, and my research was around the effects of explosions on the human body. And much of that research, just because of what was going on in the Middle East, was research around how explosions were affecting the human brain. And as an engineer, we were asking questions like how does the blast load get transmitted through the skull and how can we protect or prevent? What's the threshold for injury? Those were the questions an engineer would ask. And that was fun, and I was excited to do that. But I was also spending time talking to neurologists and therapists and neuroscientists and neuropsychologists, and they were looking at questions around what happens if we don't protect, and what if the blast does occur? What do we do then to help our warriors? So I got increasingly curious about the brain as a result of working with these people in the biosciences field. And so at about the halfway mark through my engineering career, I took a vacation and went back to school to get a degree in cognition and neuroscience. And what made me come to the Brain Performance Institute was the research they were doing to answer the question of how can we take somebody who maybe has had a traumatic experience in combat or had a traumatic brain injury and bring them back to the level of cognitive performance they had before that ever occurred. And so it's that chance to improve brain health that drew me here, and it was the desire to improve brain health that drew me into this field.
That's a fascinating process. And, one of the things about the Brain Institute is you guys are really wanting to be kind of a magnet of resources to educate kind of caregivers across the spectrum, both professional and family caregivers. What is it that you think that you've learned in this process that can really sort of help the caregivers? What are important things that they need to learn about their own brain health?
So I think many caregivers hear the message that they need to prioritize self-care. I think many of them hear that message, but from a brain health standpoint, they don't necessarily have the information of what that means. What is self-care when it comes to their brain health? And many of the caregivers that are family members are not only caring for somebody who is struggling with a form of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common, but not only are they caring for that person, but they're also wondering, am I next? Because as soon as you have a loved one who starts to make that age-related decline, you can't help but look inwardly and think, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in this situation in the future. And so I think one of the things that we most want to provide to caregivers is an understanding that they can take care of their brain, and in doing so, they can reduce their risk of following in the footsteps of that person that they're caring for. And so we are wanting that message to get out, and then we're wanting to offer caregivers some very specific tools that they can start to use in their daily life as they're also caring for a loved one.
And so is this something like, people talk about self-care and maybe they're talking physical fitness, or at least know, okay, in relation to self-care and physical fitness, if I go jog a mile or two a day, that's something that I can do. Are you finding that there are similar types of things that can be done? Because, well, I guess first off, in my understanding, I hear about kind of the mind and psychology and what I think, but how do we know that we have a healthy brain? And what are some things that we can actually do, or are there things that we can do to keep our brain healthy in the same way that we might keep our cardiovascular system healthy? What's the research showing?
So you asked two really important questions. How do I know if my brain is healthy? And then is there something I can do about it that's research supported? On the first question, how do I know if my brain is healthy? That is a really tough question. If you've gone to get your annual physical this year, you will recall that the doctor really didn't do anything regarding your brain.
Right.
He didn't, got a blood pressure cuff, and he drew your blood, and he's going to look at your cholesterol, and he weighs you and then criticizes you if it's too high. So you know that he looked at your heart. But he didn't really look at your brain. And the reason your doctor didn't look at your brain is he did not have the equivalent of a blood pressure cuff. And that's a lacking in the state of the science. That being said, at the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas of Dallas, where I'm from, they have developed something they call the Brain Health Physical. So instead of the analogy is that you get your annual physical, this is your annual brain health physical. And it is today a combination of cognitive assessments that were developed here and some neuropsych assessments and some psych health, so questionnaires about depression, anxiety, that type of thing. So it's a combination of those things. Um, and it's fairly sensitive. In fact, it's extremely sensitive, much more sensitive than a traditional set of neuropsych health batteries. When you bring in the cognitive assessments that were developed here, you find yourself with the ability to detect changes in performance on a very very granular level, so that people who are really, really high performers but feel like they're slipping, you can, even though they are still high performers, you can tell that where they're slipping, and you can help them to understand that. So that's what we have today. We are launching a longitudinal initiative, so that means a multi-year initiative with about 25 participants across the country and Europe to take that starting point and move it in a direction where it's also integrating some upcoming technologies, and is condensing what we do into something that we could potentially put into every doctor's office in the country, so that they'll have that blood pressure cuff, only it's something for the brain. So we're probably a year or two from that. In the meantime, the cognitive assessments that we do, our brain health physical, is probably the best thing we have.
And
So that's the answer to the first question.
And in terms of the second question, what can we do? So that kind of tells me that we have some tools that you're working on developing to be able to quantify, is my brain healthy? Have you gotten to the point where there are some things that you can do to keep your brain healthy or improve it? Where is the research showing currently?
The research is actually incredibly exciting in this area. And it's also very, very surprising in some ways. Um, Researchers around the globe who are looking specifically at Alzheimer's are estimating that roughly 30% of the people who are struggling with Alzheimer's today have a disease that could have been prevented with what we already know helps brain health. So that's an extraordinary statement. That means that we already have tools in hand today that can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. Moreover, we have a number of things that we're working on that could extend into additional tools. So that's the very surprising and very positive news. The surprising news beyond that is that the things that we find that reduce our risk of Alzheimer's are not coming out of the pharmaceutical industry at all. And in fact, the pharmaceutical industry is kind of departing from this kind of research, because there have been no new successful pharmaceutical interventions for brain health issues in 20 years. Clinical trial after clinical trial falls short. And so the pharma companies can't afford to keep throwing good money after bad, and they're moving. In contrast, we have found that through cognitive training in a variety of forms, we can dramatically improve brain health on a number of levels. So the maybe I'll call the lowest level is the neural level, where we're actually changing structure and function and neurons and dendrites and pharmacy, the chemistry of the brain. We're changing it, but we're also changing it in terms of the performance of the brain, the ability to reason and think and problem solve. We are also changing it from a psych health standpoint. We can affect anxiety and mood disorders of a variety of kinds. We can support improvements in attention, which would be important with populations that have attention deficits. We can even change brain performance when it comes to social impairments that we think of with Asperger's and Alzheimer's. So we're finding that on multiple levels we can improve brain health. And the ways we do that are primarily taking anything that's good for your heart, do it, it's also good for your brain. And then on top of that, adding a variety of forms of cognitive training.
And are you working with populations across ages and demographics, or are you only working with kind of the aging population? Do you have stories for children, adolescents? Where are you focusing, or where do you think that you're able to apply these learnings?
That is actually another surprising finding of the last 20 years. So it's not entirely new information, but it's something that is still new from the standpoint of heart health, which we've understood a long time. The brain is neuroplastic. And the gentleman that coined that phrase, neuroplastic, Dr. Mike Mersnick, is continuing to be a researcher today. So that tells you how new that term really is. And what neuroplastic means is that the brain is designed to change. It is an inherent property of the brain that it changes. Up till about 20 years ago, people thought the brain only changed as it was developing and growing. We now know that there is no time in your life when your brain does not change. There is simply no time across the lifespan that you cannot affect your brain health because it can change. Now, how you change your brain, how you leverage that neuroplastic property to improve brain health is where the research needs to be focused and where we have been focusing our research. We have done work with middle school kids, and in the middle school kids, we've reached almost 65,000 children. And in doing so, we've shown that we can take kids that are in an inner city school where they typically have really bad test scores and poor academic performance, and in some ways have already been given up on by our society. And we can, in about 2 years, get them to have test scores standardized and also cognitive test scores that match those of private school kids. So that's a life changing effect that we can have in the middle school kids. But we have also found in an aging population, we can increase their cerebral blood flow, which is blood to the frontal lobe. Well, it's all over the brain, but in particular, we can increase blood flow to the frontal lobe by an average of 8%. Now, 8% doesn't sound like all that much, but we lose of 1 to 2% of cerebral blood flow per decade after we're 20. So when we say we can increase blood flow through cognitive training, another way to phrase that is we can give you back 4 decades.
Wow, that's fascinating. A question that I always like to ask people is, what keeps you up at night? And so I'm going to ask that question to you, and I'm going to let you frame it in either one of two ways. Either what keeps you up at night that you're super excited about when you look at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what keeps you up at night with excitement and encouragement? Or, if there's some things that you're like, these are warning clouds and these keep me up because there's an ominous. I'll let you answer it in either path that you want to go down. But what does keep you up at night?
Frankly, I sleep well because that's brain healthy, and so I make an effort to sleep well.
Excellent.
Uh,
I love that.
yeah, 7 to 9 hours a night. Everybody, shoot for that. That being said, when I have the fail in sleeping well, I'm gonna go down both paths. If you look at the trajectory for the number of people that deal with Alzheimer's every year in not just our country, but especially in our country, but worldwide, and see how it is increasing every year as our population ages, you can look at that for only a moment before you get profoundly scared. And it's because of the cost to individual lives. It's because the healthcare costs will break a country, even a country as wealthy as ours, if we go down the same path we've been going down. So that is terrifying on a personal level, and it's terrifying on a human species level. Um, the reason I bring that up and say I'm going to go down both paths is I am so encouraged by the direction that cognitive neuroscience is taking us. Um, in addition to the cognitive training that can change our cerebral blood flow, and there is a corresponding improvement in brain performance, there's another approach to cognitive training that's a partner of ours that has been found to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's over a 10-year period by more than 30% just by playing a computer game. And in fact, here's what's really weird about this. You play the computer game for a grand total of 14 hours over 1 month, and that's it. 2 years later, you do a couple, 4 hours more, and you have a reduction in risk of Alzheimer's of 30% 10 years later. So what that tells me is that the answer to this horrible looming disaster that is both personal and economic, the answer is already appearing. And the research that we are doing and the research that our partners are doing to look at Alzheimer's from a prevention perspective as opposed to treatment, I think is the answer. Because it's great if somebody has Alzheimer's and you can treat them so they get better. That is awesome. But what's even more awesome is that they never have to get it in the first place.
Wow.
And I think that's how we change the world. We keep people from even having to go down this path. We will never prevent 100% of the people from having Alzheimer's any more than we've prevented 100% of the people from heart disease. There will always be some who still get it. But if we can prevent it for the majority of the population the way we have with heart disease, we have an impact that is personal and deeply profound.
You're really giving a lot of people a lot of hope. And I just circle back to one of the first things that we talked about is caring for the caregiver. And that fear that, oh my goodness, my dad has had this, so now I'm going to get it. My kids are going to get it. And what you're saying and what you're leaving us with is there is a lot of hope, and there's a lot of work that's being done. It's moving very rapidly. So thank you very much. If someone does want to follow the work that you're doing at the Brain Institute, where can they go? How can they be aware of what's going on? What's the best way to connect with the Center for Brain Health?
I think you just maybe asked my favorite question because it is so important. One of our primary goals is that we help people be more aware of their brains and what they can do to improve their own brain health. You can go to the Center for Brain Health. We have a website, and I would encourage everybody to do that. They can engage with us in a couple of different ways. They can get involved in our research as participants. They can also they can engage with us by coming to our training and learning more about their brain. We offer talks. And we are increasingly making things available online. We have an app coming out soon where they can do brain health challenges on a regular basis. And the act of doing those brain health challenges is training your brain. So I would encourage people to check out the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas. We have a website, and we are constantly populating it with new information. We also have the Brain Performance Institute website, but they actually link together because the Brain Performance Institute is part of that center. If they come to us, they'll find a lot of information and a lot of opportunities to participate in our research, including that long-term research initiative that I talked about, where we're going to figure out how to define brain health. They can be a part of that research, and as a participant in that research, they get access to things they can do to get their brain healthier.
Well, that is a wealth of information, and thank you very much for sharing it. Dr. Young, thank you for taking the time to come on to this episode. I really think that you're providing a lot of value to caregivers, both professional and personal caregivers, and obviously you're doing a ton of good work in the academic research development. So thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Well, if you want to know more about what's happening at the Center for Brain Health, that web address is brainhealth.utdallas.edu. And you can go there and you can get all the information that Dr. Young referred to. Well, if you found this episode valuable, please do us a favor and subscribe to Coffee with John in iTunes and leave an honest rating. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes, visit us at coffeewithjohn.com. That's coffeewithjohn, JON.com. Also, if you have any comments, ideas, and topic suggestions, connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. All of the links are at coffeewithjohn.com.